The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Mark. G'day, Mark.
Hey, Tim, how are you?
Can you tell me where and when you were born? And if you could describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So it's all over to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the show, first of all. Fantastic. And I grew up in Sydney on the northern beaches. My whole sort of junior life there. Real surfing rugby league community. It's one of those things that you sort of just born into there. My father was a surfer, and so I started at a very early age, sort of 5 years of, I think around about 5 or 6, I started surfing, and I was competing by the time I was sort of 12, and then that was it. That was my sort of junior life doing that. It's a real lifestyle there. It's just part of the community, and even the school is very part of it. I went to just a local high school, public school.
Yeah. What about before that? How did you start off? Did you have a kindergarten or nursery school?
Yeah. The normal system. Just started off at kindy, and it's a very sort of insular place where everyone knows everybody. So you sort of tend to go through your years with the same sort of people. But I started off at kindy and obviously what we call our primary school, our junior years through to year 6, and just a local school as well, public, and then into my high school, which was quite close to the beach. So it's always a concern when you have a school close to the beach. So the surf's good. Everyone's taking off and going surfing, and you're seeing your teachers in the surf as well. Sometimes it's quite funny, actually.
Yeah. So from what I've seen of that part of Australia, all the houses are sort of on one level. You don't have sort of 2-story houses so much. So did you have a sort of a big bungalow type house?
Yeah, actually, we had a pretty nice home. The area I grew up in specifically, there was a lot of actually funny 2-story homes. So we had a nice 2-story home, sort of in the bush, like I said, just a couple of kilometres back from the beach. A nice big block of land, and it was actually a fantastic place to grow up. To be honest, I loved it.
I mean, what was the wildlife like around there? I mean, you hear stories about Australia, and everything wants to bite or eat you and tries to kill you there. So how did you cope with the funnel web spiders and the snakes and everything that's there that's wants to do for you?
Funny you say that, actually, because Sydney, like especially where I grew up at the beaches, it's the funnel web capital of Australia. So there's a lot of them around. You just got to be careful. It's like anything, if you go looking for trouble, you're going to find it. There's just little tricks. You don't leave your washing basket, you don't leave that down on the ground. They love the rain. When the rain comes out, they love the rain and the moisture. Look, they're an aggressive spider. So you've got to really be careful, especially the male. The male, if he bites you, you're in real trouble,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything with the snakes as well. You've just got to be careful. If you see anything, you leave it alone. It's not going to bite you. We don't get here we don't get the taipan, which is the really aggressive, nervous snake. They're more up north and in the desert. And they're a very aggressive snake and very fast. We do get the brown snakes in Sydney, and the death adders. So you just got to really be careful, but you don't see a lot of them. You've got to go looking for them.
You've got to go out your way to find one, I guess.
I think it's more danger in the ocean. Definitely, you've got with the sharks. You've got a lot more, and it's a funny thing because growing up we didn't have a lot of what we have now, and for some reason now we have a lot more and a lot bigger ones, and it's really unprecedented. We always thought that the great whites were a cold water shark, and they're even getting as far as surface paradise now in warm water. So it's a really strange one, but you just got to respect them,
Absolutely. So with the old funnel webs, then do you have to, when you go to the dunny, you have to sort of check underneath the seat before you sit down?
Yeah, no, they don't climb. They can't climb. They're a ground spider, so they live in like a little funnel in the soil, and sort of near like little rock gardens. And you can see them. The tunnels around about the size of, say, almost like a 2-pound coin, that sort of size. And they live like in this little burrow underneath the soil there. So, and they come out sort of on dusk, on dark. So if you go out with a torch, you can literally see them on the front of their funnel, and their fangs. So their fangs are huge for the size of the spider.
Yeah.
they're pretty amazing thing. So, but
So you learned fairly early on to stay well away.
oh yeah, absolutely. You just grow up with
Yeah.
it, And Australia's got so many, so much wildlife, so much bird life, and a lot of marsupials. You've got obviously Sydney's full of, even where I live down the road, really, it's full of wallabies and kangaroos, and they're everywhere because they're not like it's a rare thing. If you want to see them, they're on the golf courses here, and if you're playing around at golf, you got to be careful. You don't want to whack one in the head. you might get in trouble. So
Yeah.
but, and you get a lot of things like echidnas and things. So your little spiky little things across the road, and occasionally koalas. You don't see a lot of koalas. They're a bit harder to find. They're a bit more sort of stick to themselves. But
didn't they have a bit of a problem with the koalas a while back, where they were becoming endangered because the wildfires and that are sort of burning out the eucalyptus.
Yeah, that's right. The fires we had were just they were just horrendous. We get them every 10 or 15 years in Australia. You get a big one. The back burning's a real problem here, and I think the government's always fighting the organisations to do with the back burning. And the last one we had, the big ones, I'm sure you would have heard of it. That it was just brutal. Yeah. It was just absolutely brutal. It was just black sky for weeks. And ash everywhere in the sky and falling in the ocean, and lost a lot of wildlife. A lot of people lost their lives and lost their homes. It was a real bad one. So we had a bad run the last couple of years with COVID and the fires and the floods, and it's been relentless.
That's a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we diverted slightly off. So let's have a look at your junior school then. So going through junior school, what was your favourite subject?
I always loved history, to be honest, and I had a fantastic history teacher at school. He was actually an ex-rugby league player, played for one of the clubs in Sydney. Lovely bloke, and sadly not with us anymore, but he's one guy I remember, and he really was a reason I loved history. So I've always loved that, and I've always liked sort of writing as well.
So looking at the history then, I guess it's Australian history that's taught in school is slightly different to history taught anywhere else. Was it a lot about Australian history, or did you cover European history?
Look, I think sadly when I was at school, it was very, very based on European history. And when I say sad, there was, I think now we're really starting to go a lot more into Australian history because there's such great history out here. And I mean, for me personally, I come from an Indigenous side as well. My dad's side is Indigenous, and my dad's side of the family's got an incredible history. He was my grandfather 5 times over, great-grandfather 5 times over was a chap called King Bungaree, and he was a king of the Sydney tribes, and he was actually on Matthew Flinders' ship when it circumnavigated Australia. So,
wow,
he was an amazing figure, and so he's my direct relative, and so we've learnt a lot about him and that side of things in the last sort of, I suppose, 10 years. Really dug into his history, but they're teaching a lot more of it at school now. But when I was at school, no, it really wasn't a thing. Look, it's great you learnt, of course, about that European history because that's my other side, and World War I and II and things, and but I loved history. I've always loved it. My dad was a real history buff, so it sort of carried on from him.
And say literature as well. So was that English literature, looking at the classics, or?
I think just writing in general. I just liked that comprehension and writing stories and things, and it's something that carried on with me. We'll talk about, I suppose, a bit later with my university, that I really found a real skill in it that I had, and a real patience that I never knew that I had. So yeah, I really liked that side of it. I mean, I didn't really follow it on. I left, school probably. I wish I had gone all the way through, but unfortunately I didn't. So.
so I guess you have to be a little bit patient, waiting for the surf.
Oh yeah, it's just
sat there waiting. It's a bit like hang gliding, waiting for the weather.
The surf. You're so reliant on the elements, on the wind, the swell direction, the tides, the level of the wind, sunny days, cold days. You really live for it. You live and breathe it. You become almost like a weatherman. And
Yeah. So you mentioned rugby league. Now, I'm a rugby union person myself, and I started playing rugby at school. So, was league bigger than union in that part of Australia?
Look, I think in general it is bigger. It is definitely is bigger, a lot more coverage. That the union here really got pigeonholed into that private school sort of arena. And so it was the real private schools that played union and the public schools league. And of course, the majority in Australia, especially New South Wales and Queensland, where it's the two big league states, that's where, the game's played. And where I grew up at the beach, it's a really big rugby league, and like we talked about, surfing community. But the union is definitely prevalent. I played a bit of union when I was a kid because my cousins played union. I always played either half or 5'8" or sort of fly half, and that was where I always played. And I love the game. Some of my friends wanted to become very, very good, really amazing first grade international footballers. So it was around that sort of arena quite a bit when I was young as well, and I still love the game. So
you're a good number 10 then.
I was okay, but you don't get as hurt in the surf. You get bashed in the league, and surfing you don't. So it became a pretty simple choice in the end. I think my dad was a bit horrified, but that was my choice.
Yeah. So you concentrate on surfing rather than number 10ing.
Yeah, and I was competing in surfing. I was competing all around, not just locally, but around Australia. Even did a little bit of competing overseas, over in France and Spain. But mainly just on the Australian sort of junior circuit, and a lot of my friends we're all in that mold of competition surfers or semi-professional, professional, and that's just how it was. It was like a natural progression, really.
Yeah, I suppose if you're playing hooky half the time when the surf's up.
Yeah, that's right.
So
absolutely.
Your schooling must have suffered a little tiny bit back then, or did they just close the school because surf's up and then come back in after and carry on?
Yeah. Oh, they're always going off their brain about it. They're always, there's always threats of suspension and things, but I think it always fell on deaf ears. It's quite funny. But it was a great place to grow up, and honestly, it was a wonderful place. It's not. I don't think it's the same anymore. It's lost a bit of its. It's like everything with progress, I suppose, and that it was quite a. It was just a great place where everybody knew each other. And the beach we're at, we sort of ran that beach. It was our beach, and everyone knew everybody. Could literally leave your car unlocked if you wanted and just go surfing, and no one would touch it. But you can't do that anymore.
No, come back, the car's gone.
Oh yeah, well, everything's gone out of it.
Bricks.
Yeah, it's been ransacked. That's right. So yeah.
So moving on slightly, then, what about your high school? How'd you get on there?
Yeah, so I went to like I said, another school right near the beach called Cromer High School. A very big public school. I think around about 1,300 students, so quite a big school. And I think the story for me when I was at school is it's a real simple one, that I didn't really dig school. I wanted to get out of there, and I think I did the bare minimum, what I had to do. Always the same on my report cards. It was always like, Mark's got the ability, he just doesn't apply himself. And my father was a very bright man. My father was extremely intelligent. So I always, I suppose, had it there, but I just didn't really care. I cared about, more about my surfboard, and much to my mum and dad's, displeasure, I suppose, always in my ear about it. And I still loved history. Going through that, it was one of my favourite subjects, and always sport, of course. Always playing football for the school or surfing for the school, which I was heavily involved in. And
the football, was that Australian rules football? I mean,
no, just rugby. It's so confusing, isn't it?
Blooming savage game.
Yeah, just rugby league. We don't play that. We never play that game at school, and it's the secondary sport up here in Sydney, New South Wales. That's a Victorian, South Australian, like Western Australian sport, where they're fanatics, but they're all a bit crazy. They probably think the same about us. So
yeah. So, what was the worst subject at school?
Oh, I didn't like science. I didn't like science. I didn't mind maths. Once again, I didn't apply myself enough, but I was never really into the science side of things, to be honest. Just didn't interest me. I was just like, they're making the numbers up. So that's an easy one. That one, to answer that one.
Fair one. So, When did you graduate high school with some sort of half honours or just
I just graduated school. It's just called your school certificate. You've got your school certificate in Sydney or Australia, sorry, which is year 10, and then your high school certificate, which is year 12. Which you can then go on, of course, to university and things. So I just I just graduated with my school certificate, and that was it. I was out of there.
Gone like a rat up an aqueduct.
That's right.
So what did you do after school? What did you do when you left?
Well, I got an apprenticeship in the electrical game. Started off doing the sort of vehicle electrics, but then went more into the marine electrical, which I quite liked, to be honest. I was doing a lot of the bigger super maxis, your big ocean racing boats, the race in the Sydney to Hobart and the America's Cup, things like that. Yeah. And I was doing that and did my apprenticeship, but also then surfing and competing and just basically molding the two together. So that I could travel and then work in my trade and travel, work in my trade, because surfing back in those days was a tough sport. There was no money in it. And the sponsorships were very, very slim as well. Not like it is now. All the boys are all millionaires now, the boys and girls. They're all it's an incredible sport now. And back in those days, it wasn't. So you were really funding your own lifestyle by working part-time, like a lot of us did. And that's pretty much what I did up until my sort of that sort of mid-20s sort of time, when my father had that bit of a chat to me one day saying, "Mate, what are you doing with your life? You're just back and forth. You're not really doing much." And that's when I had this dream, this crazy dream in my head for years and years and years about the military, because I always had a fascination with the military. Very good friend of ours, their son was an ex regiment soldier, an ex-SAS guy in Australia, and he was always in my ear about having a go at the army. So one day I just surprised my dad and said, "I'm going to join the army." And I think he nearly fell over, especially coming from where I come from. Yeah.
So what age were you when you joined the army?
I think I was around about 20. I was about in my mid-20s, about 26, I think, 27. So I was a little bit older. Yeah. But I was very fit for my age, I suppose, surfing my whole life and playing football. When I joined, I was already at a good level of fitness. I didn't know I was. You never know, do you? You just think you're okay. But I soon worked out, upper body-wise, I was very, very strong. And I was always reasonable at running. Never the first, but never last. So so I joined, and big shock to the system, like everyone that joins the military. It's like, what am I doing here?
Rabbit in headlights moments.
Honestly, I rang my dad up and I was like, I think I made a mistake. And he's like, "I don't care, you're staying there." And it was always my dream to get into one of the specialist units, like the paras or the commandos. So I was very fortunate going through my infantry training, that I got one of the sort of PT awards there, the physical training awards, and they gives you the choice then of what unit you sort of want to go to. So I was able to leapfrog that and go straight to the paras and go there, and which I was so thrilled about. A unit with such history there with the Vietnam War and Korea. So it's the old story. You march in there with your, we call the crap hat. You don't get the maroon beret, and you've got to wait till your course comes around and your selection course, and then go off and be able to pass that to get in. A bit like sort of P company style thing. And but for me to get in, it was a massive thrill. I was over the moon, and had a few people that were a bit unsavory. Like maybe you're not going to make it, not good enough, and so it was. Someone like myself, that's the worst thing you could say to me. I just grab that sort of stuff.
That inspires you, does it, to do better?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a shocker like that. If you tell me I can't do it, I was very fortunate to be around a great bunch of guys there. Back in those days, it was a strictly male unit. It was all males. I think things have changed a bit now. And I was very lucky to do a couple of tours of East Timor. So I did like an operational sort of peacekeeping tour of East Timor, and then like a training tour of East Timor when the reserves came in, and they were great tours actually. I loved East Timor. I loved the people there, very nice people. And you overdosed on coffee, because all I do is drink coffee, so you're forever drinking coffee over there. But we're out in the jungles a lot, sort of doing like a recon style job, sort of 3
Yeah.
days out in the jungle, then 2 days back in, and just did that all the time for my tour there, all the time. But it was a great experience.
Do you ever do Bougainville?
No, I never did Bougainville. No, that was a little bit before, or sort of when I joined, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was one of the things that was going on in say my early days, I guess. And yeah, there was talk of it, but we never got there.
Yeah. I know a few
coming
of
over
ours.
doing a bit of an exchange, but it never ever came off.
Yeah, no, a few of the sort of older crew, they got to go and do a couple of tours, or a tour, but it was really low key. It was very it was not a big publicized sort of operation.
It was more a psychological operation. The psychological operations boys were out there running the hearts and minds operation, from what we understood of it at the time.
That's right. Exactly right. I mean, we did a lot of that sort of stuff in East Timor as well. A lot of it was chasing ghosts, but a lot of hearts and minds. We'd go and stay in a village for a few days and make sure they were okay. And like I said, overdosed on coffee. God, it's unbelievable. And horrible conditions. Very humid and hot, and we were literally sleeping in our mosquito nets in the jungle at night, with the whole jungle alive at night. But it was a really, really good tour, though. I enjoyed my time over there.
So you got into the paras then?
Yeah.
What was it like on your first jump?
I think I was like everybody. I think if you're saying you're not a bit scared or a bit terrified, I think you're lying. There's that element of fear, but I've always been a person that, you know what, I'm in this plane, and there's nothing that's going to keep me in this plane. I'm going no matter what. Even if I'm scared, I'm still going to go. And you just make yourself go. I was with a very experienced company there, a lot of experienced guys, and great support. And look, I think once I did my first one, I was like, how good's this? I mean, I think being in a plane is the worst part. When you're tack flying and the Hercules, and you're up and down, and people who've never experienced that would never know what it's like, the tactical flying, and you literally, you're following the gradient of the land, and then the side doors open, or the tailgate opens, and you're hooked on, and then they're like, right, as soon as that green light's on, get out of there. Yeah. And once I'd done that one, I loved it. Then we started doing your pack jumps and your night jumps, and we were very lucky that our base was quite close to us. We actually had our own airstrip at our base as well. So sometimes we'd be picked up at the base by Herc, and then we'd go off up the road and just go parachuting into the farmland there. It was fantastic. I loved it. And I was very lucky to never have a big, have a bad drop, a bad accident. So I was quite lucky like that.
Yeah, you didn't have to deploy your reserve at all then.
No, never once. Mate, touch wood. The old reserve, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was on a plane with one of the guys had a very bad, the reserve with the sort of little parachute in the reserve, and it popped the door half open, and he got sucked out of the door by the reserve, and we all thought he was gone, thought he was dead, but miraculously he actually survived and made a full recovery. Unbelievable. He went down unconscious, but all his parachutes deployed. Luckily, his static line was on the back, and his static line, pulled out of his main chute and deployed, and he went down unconscious and was okay. So very lucky.
Yeah. I guess that's a tough lesson to learn. Don't stand too close to the door when they open it.
Oh yes. For some reason, I'd always be near the front of the damn door. Always. I've got no idea how, but I'd always be at the front of that stick. Always 1, 2, or 3.
So, how long did you do in the paras?
Yeah, so I did roughly about 6 years there, and this was coming up to that sort of 2003-ish time. It was after, of course, the towers had come down, and I was mucking around at the time with doing my selection for the commandos and doing the barrier test for that and things like this, and that's where I was heading in that direction. And then like all of us, we all want to go overseas, and at the time only the SAS were going into Afghanistan and Iraq, and we all wanted to go, and they were telling us we were going, then they'd tell us we weren't going, and this went back and forth for a good 6 months, maybe a year. Very frustrating. And one of the guys one day, a friend of mine from the commandos, he actually said to me, he said, mate, would you think about going over to Iraq as a private contractor? And this is when it was just starting up. We were hearing all the stories about what was going on in about the middle of 04. and me stupidly said, you know what? Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that because the money was great, and you get to do some actual operational things. Not knowing what I was really getting into, I just said yes, and then literally 2 days later, I got a phone call from a lovely guy from Western Australia. He's one of the owners of an Aussie company, an ex-SAS guy. There was 4 of them owned a company. And he said, mate, your mate's giving you a good rap. Do you want to come over? And I said, yep, why not? So literally, I got out of the army. I was out within 4 weeks. A friend of mine got me out quite quickly through admin. Yeah, unbelievable. He was a friend of mine. He was a pay clerk, and he was able to help me get out quickly.
Pull all the right strings at the right time.
Unbelievable 4 weeks, and then literally a week to 2 weeks after that, I was on one of the first plane loads of Aussie contractors bound for we all met at Sydney Airport, then flew into Dubai, then into Jordan, into Amman, into the dreaded Queen Alia Airport, and there I was standing in the I think it was a Holiday Inn hotel in Jordan, thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And that was
how
that
much
was
training did you get for that?
Not much, to be honest. It was very much like, once you get here, we'll train you up. So we basically all had a big meeting in the hotel foyer that night. We all flew in the next morning. I don't think many of us got much sleep because it was we all knew what we were going into. We didn't know, but we did know. And I think because we did in those days, you did the big spiral. You spiraled in the plane from way above into the airport at Baghdad. They put the plane on that side entry, and you just did the world's greatest roller coaster into the airport. And I remember when the plane was landing right over, and I was looking out, and the whole city was just on fire. There was just plumes of smoke everywhere. And I think everyone had this bit of probably a great deal of apprehension, a bit of a sick feeling in their stomach. I think there wasn't one of us that wasn't a bit, I don't know if the word scared, but we were definitely apprehensive about going into it. It was full on.
So what was the first job you did there? How did you settle in? I mean, what was the plan?
Well, basically, we were doing all of the election contracts. So we were making sure that election officials, documentation that were being moved around the locations that we were going to be deployed to. We did about a week's training. And like you would know, Tim, all the guys that went over there, they were all highly skilled, experienced guys. A bunch of guys. It was all, specialist guys, snipers, recon guys, paras, commandos, SAS guys, all together. And there was no egos really. They were left at the door. Everyone was told, this isn't the army anymore. You're all here together. We don't care who you are, where you're from. You're here because of what you've done. And after the training, I deployed down to Al Qud, a city called Al Qud, above Basra there, and that was my first, I suppose, take on what really to expect. It was a dangerous city. It was a Shia city with a heavy Iranian influence, and we got attached to the 10th Group Green Berets down there. So it just never really happened in history. A lot of the things we did, where you've got contractors attached to US Special Forces units and doing these remarkable jobs, and that was more of a role down there where we were just, like I said, we were guarding documentation, taking certain people around. Of course, it was a super dangerous place, but I got very lucky down there. We sort of went without incident. There's a lot of incidents, of course, in the city. We saw a lot of bad things, but as far as us goes ourselves, we were pretty much left alone. And I was down there for around about, I think I only did a few months down there before I went up to another lovely city called Bakuba. I don't know if you've heard of Bakuba.
When I was in Iraq in 2004 on what we call Telic 3.
Yep.
And I managed to get up to Asamwa, where the Dutch were, and the Japanese came in.
That's right.
At that time, and that was a really interesting time. I had a role where I was doing some advisory work with the Dutch and the Japanese on how to. I mean, it was a big thing. If the Japanese had first time they've ever been operated outside of Japan since the Second World War, and if one of them had been injured or killed, it would have been a massive coup for whoever took them out. So we came up with a plan to be able to nullify any hostilities towards the Japanese, and they were only in there to do an engineering job where they were doing some school building and stuff like that. I also worked down in Nasiriyah with the Italians, and that was great fun. I enjoyed working with the Italians. Spent a few nights down there as well, and their food was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I got shoved out to Alamara, and that was, I didn't enjoy that at all. I nearly lost my life out there.
Dangerous place.
Very, very dangerous place. And that's and I was in that village Al Kabir where the 6 military police were killed, and that was a horrible, horrible feeling in that town.
Well, that's just below our Cook where I was, Alamara, that region, and that whole strip there is just the big Shia militias, and the Iranians controlled that whole area, didn't they?
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of fun whatsoever. And then I went up to Baghdad for a conference, a big psyops conference up in Baghdad, and I nearly lost my life going from Victory into the Green Zone, and then we nearly got shot up overnight by a burst of 5.0 that actually killed a guy on a gate. So it was a dangerous place, and somewhere I don't fancy ever going back to.
Yeah, it was like you said, it wasn't for everybody. And I think all of us, even when I landed there, I was like, same thing again, have I made a real mistake coming here? Like, this is not East Timor. This is a war zone, and we can die here at any single time, any single day, and especially in those first years from 04 through to sort of, I'd say about 08, 09, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And it was like, we had a guy there who was an ex-Vietnam veteran with us, and he was like, give me Vietnam any day compared to this. This is insane. And but Bakuba for me was it's about 40 kilometers north of Baghdad, and that was it's like a mini Fallujah. It's a Sunni city. It was run by Al Qaeda. That's where they killed Zarqawi. Zarqawi was just down the road, and when you've got the Abrams tanks there, you had Delta Force there. They're looking for him, and it was a crazy place. And we had to do all this election work there, all this taking the same thing, documentation, people to meetings, government installations, and we were being watched, and our locals were telling us they were terrified. They said, we're going to get hit. And we did a bit of a mock election, if you want to call it, like a polling sort of setup, polling booth location. It was a mock one, the Americans and us set up together. And that night, it got RPG'd and blown up, and they smashed the whole place. And we went, well, okay, what are we going to do here? So we had a big meeting with the Americans. The support they gave us was incredible. And we decided in the end, after our big meeting, we were going to go covert. So we then got out, talked to our locals. We had some fantastic local boys. Honestly, they were so good. And they addressed us. We had big budgets, so we bought all local cars. We bought, cars that would suit our clothing. So we had BMWs and Mercedes to suit our sort of white dish dashes and red and white Shamags, the whole deal. So it looked like, we thought, rather than being the minority, let's dress like them. And it's a job. It's not for everyone. You've got to be able to, I suppose, almost have a bit of a look where you can pull it off, where you can go quite brown in the sun.
Yeah.
You can't be doing it with blonde hair and blue eyes.
No.
And then you've then got to have and you've then got to have the skill set, or you've got to have that mentality and that personality to be able to pull it off, and that operating in that calmness under pressure. Because when we'd go out, sure, we'd have the Americans watching us in the drone, and we'd be talking to them, but they were 10 minutes away from us with a QRF, if we needed help. And Bakuba at the time, Al Qaeda was so prevalent; they were everywhere. They were in the streets. They were just driving around like madmen, and we were literally out in 2 vehicles, doing our low profile, or whatever you want to call it, covert work to ensure the success of these elections, because it was such a big deal at the time. Everyone was watching, and so it was immense pressure, and I couldn't be proud of the guys. They were incredible, under that extreme conditions to pull that off. It's so surreal. I look back at it now.
So, for you personally, did you have any language skills? Did you pick up Arabic at all?
No, not really. Just the basics. We got spoilt with our interpreters. We had great interpreters, and especially the covert work, we always sat in the rear of the cars. We never drove. We always let them handle it. We'd always be on our phones. We'd always be kidding that we were talking on our phones. Our phones never left our side. They were always on our ear. And learning those tricks like only looking once at people, never looking twice, all that sort of stuff, picking up information. And so we really got spoiled by them, and we didn't really learn a lot. I did a little bit of French earlier, so it was just confusing another language, I suppose. And we just didn't really have to. It was more the common phrase of just being polite and thank yous and hellos and learning the count, stuff like that. But when they get that real fast dialect, you totally lose it. Funny you say that. I had a funny encounter once with a chap at a roundabout. The only time that we ever got made, we're at a roundabout and it was a big traffic jam. Couldn't get out of it. We're only about half a K from the base, and I just said to the guys, look, just be cool, just go with the flow, And there was a bloke next to me in a little truck, and he was going off, this Iraqi guy, about the traffic. I'm assuming I was cursing. You could see his language, and he looked at me, and he starts throwing his arms up in the air and cursing. And I was just looked at him and said, I'm sorry, mate, I don't know what you're talking about. And he just looked at me, Then I held my badge up and showed him my ID, and I just gave him be quiet. Just told him, please be quiet. And then I gave him a couple of our phone cards through the window, and that was it. So that was our little secret, and off we went in separate ways. But that was the only time we got made. Yeah, that's what we did. You learn those little tricks. Always have a few phone cards handy, and that was it. Off we went.
So, how long did you actually spend in Iraq? And did you get any R&R? Were you just in there for? Did you manage to get back, forwards?
Generally, my rotations were either, depending on the contract I was on, they were either generally they were either 9 weeks on, 3 weeks off, or 8 weeks on, 4 weeks off. I did a few longer ones, like 3 months on, 1 month off. You'd always go home for 3 or 4 weeks, which of course, for that decompression, which you needed to do because it was such a stressful job, and especially in the early days, you're only getting a day off maybe a week. So I think I worked out with all my years over there, I think around about 1,500 to 1,600 missions in my 11 years over there.
Good grief.
Which is, when you look at operational spheres, and I think I did 40 rotations in and out.
Good grief.
I know, it's when you look at it, and it seemed like it went so fast. It went so fast, that 11 years. It was like it was nothing, It was
they do say time flies when you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, people wouldn't believe you. They wouldn't believe that it was the best and worst job I've ever done in my life. The most dangerous, of course, but the guys I was working with, and we were with the same bunch of lads for years. I was with a bunch of British guys for years and on a team, and fantastic blokes, so professional. And it made my life so easy, Tim. I just steered that ship. They knew what to do. They knew how to act. They knew how to be around the clients. It was just it was like being in a elite sporting team every day. And you just ran you just captained that team and ran the ship. And sure, we had our incidents. I was very lucky. I only had 4 IEDs in my 11 years over there. Very lucky for me that none of them were. That's very good. Yeah.
Some guys hit with them nearly every other day.
Oh, one of my mates, he got I think 16 IEDs in 12 months. Like, and I always said, if I get a bad one and I'll survive it, I'm going home. But I was very lucky that most of mine were either too far in front of the vehicle or just behind, so it wasn't a direct hit. The big thing that we had to contend with, I suppose, down south, like you would have known about or heard about later on, was the EFPs, the Iranian copper, shaped charges, and they were just terrifying. Because if you get hit with one of those in a vehicle, I mean, they'll kill you in a tank, let alone a car, an armored vehicle. So, that was the car bombs, the roadside bombs. You can survive those. The EFPs were terrifying, so I was lucky I never got hit by one of those. Yeah.
So you're mainly driving around in local vehicles most of the time, then?
Yeah, until I got onto Project Matrix with the big British firm Aegis, and that was a US contract. So there was no money spared in that one. It was a humongous contract, and we were then in these amazing B7 armored Toyota Land Cruisers and Chevy Suburbans, and that was a core engineers project. So looking after all the new projects being built, the reconstruction of Iraq, new courthouses, police stations, water treatment plants, maternity clinics, you name it. And we'd have our number, like I'd have roughly 50 of those. And I was based down at the US Embassy, funnily enough, down at Heale, next to Babylon, right on the sort of bottom of the triangle of death there. And then we would go to all of our locations. Very dangerous place to operate. It was, all, like I said, that triangle of death of, I think, Mahdia, Yusufia, and Latifia. And that was it was just in the air. You could feel the tension and the danger in that place. And it's probably a miracle that we all got out of that in one piece working in that place. But we had American clients. We take out our civilian engineer clients and our clients up to anything from generally majors up to 2-star generals. And they'd be out with us on a regular basis every day on missions, going inspecting these places. And we really had to use our experience and nous and gut feelings and common sense there, because you're working so much in these areas that you had to avoid pattern setting. If you set those patterns over there, you go in the same places every day, you're going to get blown up and killed, because they would film you, they would watch you. And we used to, this is where it was amazing to have that team of guys where we could all sit down and discuss openly how we're going to conduct our missions. And if the guys weren't happy, they always had that freedom to speak up, because when your life's, in another person's hands like that every day, you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to get it right.
Absolutely. So what made you give it all up at the end then?
Yeah, I was at the Australian Embassy in the end. I did 4 years there as one of the close protection team leaders, looking after the Australian ambassador. And basically in the end, I gave it up, one, because the contract was up for negotiation and they dropped the money like you wouldn't believe. And all the experienced boys, I mean, I've done 11 years there. So a lot of the experienced guys are like, oh, that's it, I'm done. And I had a lot of issues in my own personal life back home, a bad marriage and going on, things like that. So that's why I decided to sort of half pull the pin, half, I think they were a bit happy that we all left anyway, because they didn't want the experienced guys there anymore, probably causing trouble. Because we were so used to operating at a certain level that it was just time to go. So that was December 2015. After all those years, I went back to Australia.
What'd you do when you get back?
Yeah, at first it was a massive shock going home. I'll be honest with you, that real identity crisis that a lot of people, I think, deal with. That and, like I said, issues with my, going through a bad divorce, and then my father passed away. So it was a really bad time for me. And I ended up working with the government in like a sort of border force style immigration role on an emergency response team, like a bit of a black role team. We used to just deal with internationals. We'd deal with unsavory internationals in Australia, and had our own plane, had our own Airbus, and we'd take them home. And I was also working in the corporate world. A friend of mine had his own risk consulting firm, and I started working with him in that corporate sphere, doing a lot of media, doing a lot of talks, a lot of leadership talks, and just advising in general, which I really enjoyed. I thought I wouldn't like it, but I loved being able to, I suppose, portray all those years of experience and working under pressure. And I'd worked out, I suppose, Tim, over all those years, I had a real knack for, I suppose, getting the best out of people. I had a real knack for it, of being a good listener. And I suppose people that maybe thought that they couldn't do something in life, I had a good knack of being able to make them realize that they could, and giving them that confidence to actually not be afraid to take challenges on in their life. And what's the worst that can happen is you can fail, and then you just try again.
Yeah. So, I mean, failure is all part of winning.
Yeah.
so you've got to go through some difficulties to be able to triumph at the end. Because
absolutely.
If you just find everything so easy, then it's not a challenge. You don't ever get any satisfaction out of it.
No, like absolutely, and I think that's exactly what you've said, and like I think it's typical of a lot of ex-military guys. None of us like to fail at anything. We like to be good or the best at everything we do, but it's about getting yourself up and dusting yourself off and working out, okay, I failed there. how do I do it again without failing this time? How do I do it better?
Yeah.
And I did this for about 6 years in the corporate game, and then in 2019, sorry, 18, I decided to. I had a friend of mine who was at university, and he was in my ear about maybe giving it a go, and I'd been thinking about it, talking to him, and he set up a meeting with me with one of the big universities in Sydney. And to say that I was terrified is an understatement. I was just like, what am I doing here? I think I've never been so terrified in my life. You feel like an imposter because, no high school certificate, no undergrad degree, nothing. And I went and spoke to them, had to end up having like a 2.5 hour interview, which went really well. And they had a degree there, like a security style degree. But they just turned around and said to me, you won't be doing that. You're going to be coming straight into a master's degree in counterterrorism at the university. And I was just like, okay, there's no turning back now. Honestly, and I think I was in disbelief until I actually made it official. But and not having that massive academic background and the structure and everything now is online. So your libraries are online, all your referencing, everything's online. So not knowing the templates and the performers and how it all works was a big one for me. And that's why I was so worried about, can I actually do this? And this is a master's degree. And this is not some little serial packet one. This is a proper in attendance degree, And I remember my first lecture sitting there, same thing, just like absolutely terrified. And the lecturer that was taking the lesson, the class, he was one of the chaps that interviewed me, and he was sitting there laughing at me, And him and I are good friends now. He's one of the professors there, but he just said, "Look, you'll be fine once you learn it. You'll be fine." And I just surrounded myself with good people, met some great people, just dived into it head first and asked questions. And once I learnt everything, once I learnt how it all worked, it then almost became, I'm not going to say easy, but I became very comfortable with the process. And in the end, I had such a great experience, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled with my experience and thrilled with my results. And I never would have dreamed of being given that opportunity and coming out of it with that big master's degree. So yeah, fantastic experience.
So that's 2018. So what happened 2020? Because I guess it was a 3 or 4 year degree course, was it?
Yeah. So I didn't do it. I did it generally a sort of 3 units at a time. So I didn't do that 4. So I think one semester I did 2. So I did over about 2.5 years. But most of it in attendance until COVID hit, of course, and really mucked things up. I did 1 semester there online, which was and that was a simulation unit that I was doing. So that was very interesting. I got very lucky also. I got asked to do a supervised subject or a supervised unit where it was just myself and, funnily enough, a lady there who's an ex-British MOD lady. She's one of the professors there, and very, very bright lady. And her and I worked together on my own paper for a semester where they gave me a lot of freedom. And I did I think it was about 7,000 word paper on the Iranian proxies in the south of Iraq. Basically focusing all around Basra, Kabbalah, Najaf, Kut in those areas, and the big militias there, your Badr Brigade and the Mahdi Army and Iraqi Hezbollah. And they gave me a lot of freedom to do what I sort of wanted. And it was a great experience just for her and I to work together on that unit. And it was really, really great.
So what happened during lockdown then? Because I mean, Australia had some pretty draconian measures put in place.
Yeah, it was pretty full on. It was just I was just doing in between the corporate stuff online, a little bit of stuff with the government still, and finishing off obviously university last. I think I finished May last year. So May, June 21 I finished. Yeah, it was a tough time I think for everybody. I was quite fortunate that my partner I'm with now, great lady, she's working. She's a registered nurse, and she was still working in that in the industry there, working for the government. So that was really great to have that stability there with her, and she was fantastic. She really got behind me with my studies as well. Really let me give it my all, if that makes sense, to get the best results possible. So
Yeah.
I'll always be grateful, for that with her. And then I was always toying with my own business. I was toying with the idea of going out on my own. I had a few people in the media industry that sort of mentioned it to me, and a good friend of mine who's actually an ex-general in the Australian Army, a brigadier general, and he was also telling me that I should maybe give it a crack. And so as I was saying, I had some great support in starting my own business up, and I felt I had a lot to offer. And this lady in Australia, a lady named Mary Henderson, she's a branding specialist. I was put onto her, and she's one of those people. There's no guarantee she'll even work with you. She's very successful, but she loved my story, loved my background, and said, "Look, let's do this." And so we built my website together, and my online training platform, my methodology, and really sort of scaled it where it's not just a one-trick pony. I sort of go into that corporate world, and I'll work with teams in the corporate world that have maybe got issues in that business. They've got maybe culture issues, or they've got a bit of a bad vibe there, or they've got people actually leaving the business, poor retention, and I'll go in there and try and help them out, and with my sort of process, my methodology. And then I'll also work with the sort of board execs level as well, but more on a one-on-one basis. And I do a bit of mentoring and a bit of coaching with them, but it's not just a quick process. Generally, I'll be either with them for sort of 3 months or 6 months, and it's all about, I suppose, understanding what makes them tick, what sort of personality they are, listening to who they are, what their issues are, and where I can come in and give them that bit of a different perspective, I suppose, on life, and just being professional and getting the best out of yourself under those environments. Like I said, working under pressure and working under duress, and learning just to be nice and calm in those stressful moments. And I love that. I love what I do.
So you've got quite a few clients then. So you've built from sort of nothing with a master's degree.
We're getting there now, and like I said, I really enjoy it. I love meeting new people. Love a bit of a challenge, and I get a bit of a thrill out of it. I get a buzz if I can have a bit of an imprint on somebody, if I can have leave something on them that I've shown them that's actually going to improve their situation. Then I think it's a great day out for me.
So it's going well.
Yeah, it's going really well, and it's starting to sort of build up now, and I've got some great exposure. I've got a article coming out soon in a magazine in Australia, which is going to be attached to international magazine, bit like a entrepreneurs sort of technical magazine that I'm being featured in I think August. They're even throwing me on the front cover and doing an article on me, so that's going to be fantastic for the business as well. I'm really happy how it's all come out, even with the website we've built and the artwork I've used, and I've incorporated a bit of my Indigenous heritage in our artwork as well in the business. It's very subtle, but it's you wouldn't even know what it was unless you asked. But so a bit of my heritage coming out there as well, which is nice.
So going forward then, how do you see the business growing? Are you looking at sort of taking people on, or is it just going to be yourself delivering a package to specific companies? Or
look, it's a bit of a hard one, I suppose, for myself, Tim, because essentially the business is my name. It's Mark Ashby Consulting. So to bring somebody else on, it's possible, but you want somebody who's got also that unique background, because people expect you to be, I suppose, to be a bit unique, because we are a bit different. We're not from that corporate sphere, and you speak a bit of a different language. Even when I speak to board members or exec CEOs, you come across as a bit different, because we're typical. We say it how we see it. We don't tap dance around too much. And look, I'd love to be at a point where I had some staff on. At the moment, it's just myself and my partner. She's been fantastic helping me out. And look, I don't also want to get to a point where the business becomes so big that you really lose your way a bit. And I think it's happened with a lot of business owners, a lot
lose
of
that identity.
Absolutely. I see a lot of execs, they forget where they came from. And it's one of the things I actually ask them, what are you still in this for? Did you actually enjoy still what you're doing? Well, why did you even start in the first place? Or what did you start and why did you start? And, did you enjoy it back then? And why are you not enjoying it now? And sometimes it can be a personal life. It can be something in their life where they're going through a divorce or a separation or kids that can have a massive effect on their on their professional life. And it's about unpacking that. And I think, I've got that bit of a skill like that where I can really sit down and I suppose dive into somebody like that and their personality and gain that trust. Because it's a big one. You've got to gain that trust. And then they'll open up to you. And you can then sort of say, right, this is what we need to do. And my program, what I do with my program as well, Tim, I've got a methodology. It's called a diamond methodology that we designed, and it's looking at the positive and negative aspect of every decision in life. So you can have an aspect where maybe an executive leaves a business and they weren't very nice, and everyone's super thrilled that the person's gone. And you're looking at the positives, but no one looks at the negative aspect. They never look at the fact that, okay, this exec was super connected. They handled all the tenders, the contracts. They knew everything about the business, and that creates a giant hole. And then who's also then going to replace that person? So that's what I try and take the emotion out of the decision and make them understand. And we used to do our missions like this overseas. We take the emotion out of it and look at the positive and negative of every mission, like your primary objective and then your secondary alternates, things like this. And I've brought that same mentality, methodology into the business.
I guess with that military background, that military ethos, they don't have that in the corporate world, and I think that's what you see, particularly over here. If there's a crisis going on, the first people that they call in to try and sort the problem out is the military.
Yeah. It's that structure, isn't it? It's that mentality, the training, the structure, and it's about knowing what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the military was to be able to transfer their set of values, their knowledge base on how to get things done into the corporate, the public and private sector, then they wouldn't need to keep bringing in the military to sort their problems out for them, because they'd know how to do it in the first place. But how do you go about starting that off, getting those ethics and methodology? Can't even say it.
Yeah, methodology is a hard word, isn't it? Even I get tongue-tied with
it. Instilled in the corporate world.
It's very hard, and you'll find some people are very open to it, and others are not. They're a bit like, oh, I don't know about this. Yeah. I love when you do have that moment there when you're able to change their paradigm, change that shift in their mindset, and they go, okay, wow, I get this now. And it's a real holy, sort of holy Moses moment, and I love saying that. And it's best when it happens naturally. You can't force feed them because they get defensive. You've got to go in there and you've got to do it gradually and slowly until you get that trust and that mindset, like I was talking about before. Yeah. But when it happens, and it happens to 95% of them, it's a great thing because they just get it all of a sudden. They're like, okay, right, I understand this now, what you're saying. And we give them that like I said, that they think, a lot of them think that know what, I suppose, what pressure is, and they do know what pressure is in their environment, having deadlines and quotas and staff, and you've got your productivity and profits and stakeholders and shareholders. But for us, if they get it wrong, they can go back to work the next day and work out, okay, how do we get this right? How do we not make the mistake again? For us on the job, if we got it wrong, maybe one of the boys loses their leg or dies, and you can't go and change that. Once you've got it wrong, you've got to live with that for the rest of your life, and you've got to face that. And maybe their families, you've got to face their wives or their families, and that's pressure that most people will never ever understand, and that's why we are different.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's what makes us the best in the world.
It's a great thing you said there. Yeah, and I get asked that sometimes. How are you able to do it? How are you able to last so many years over there? And how do you guys do this and that? And the answer is, I don't know what the answer is. The answer is we're just different to you. We just we're in that small percentage of people who can do it.
Yeah, it's
and that's
that
what I say.
military mindset that
Yeah,
anything's possible, and you get on with the job in hand, and you just employ every tactic that you can
yeah,
to save your own life and
that's
the
right.
guys that's around you. And
And that's what it's
it's
all about,
putting
isn't
that
it?
it's about putting that trust into your muckers, into your mates.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
at the end
absolutely.
of
It's
the
all about
day,
those people next to you. It's all about those guys, and later on the girls that came into the picture.
yeah,
And all I cared about was getting those souls home. And people sometimes say, "Oh, you shouldn't get too close to your teammates or your workers." Or I disagree with that. I
mm,
always got so close to them because it made me want to be the best version of myself to get those people home. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I think that's where the military side of it comes in. You have to have that really close working relationship. You have to have that trust in each other, and not to constantly micromanage, and trust that people will let the training kick in, will do the right thing at the right time, that protects the whole team. And I think that's the military ethos that should be instilled into public and private life.
absolutely. And it's like that individual mindset that when the collective, the team is nothing without this group of individuals.
Yeah,
If you miss one cog off that wheel, it falls apart. And you've got to sometimes, and I say this in the corporate world, you've got to give your people that chance, give them that bit of trust,
mm,
and they won't let you down. You'd be surprised the skilled people that exist in some of those corporations and big business that don't get utilised. And sometimes you
yeah,
might say to a senior manager, do you realise who you've got here? Stop employing from outside and start looking at your own people. You've got some great people here. And
yeah,
they don't have a process or some sort of blueprint where they actually even look at these people. They just think, we've just got to hire from outside. We've just got to keep replacing that outside
mm,
person. And sometimes it's the best people are right in front of you. Just give them a chance because they've been there for
yeah,
years.
yeah. They've been in the role, and they can see where the management's getting it wrong. And I guess that's
And if
one
they
of the
need a
key aspects.
qualification, then put them on a
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
If you want
absolutely.
the qualification so badly, put them on a course and get them qualified,
Yeah.
but use them.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a bit of paper that says that you can you can learn something. It's not saying that you can do it. It just says that you're capable of doing it, or
Yeah,
capable of learning something.
yeah,
And
absolutely. And that was like university. It's like, you've done your 2.5 years, your master's. There's your bit of paper. See you later.
yeah,
That's
but
it. Here's
it
your bit of
doesn't give
paper.
you the experience behind it.
No, 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 absolutely not.
Um,
It just tells you that you're a person who can study and
yeah,
academically pass things, or write
yeah.
down essays, and that's what it is.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mark,
fantastic.
this has been fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's been great talking to you, Tim. Absolutely. Yeah, really enjoyed it. And I thought, even from listening to some of your other podcasts, I thought, he's definitely either military or something. I could just tell anyway by the way you spoke.
Sorry to use all the military jargon.
Yeah, and that's right for your listeners. You don't want to be too
Yeah,
you don't want to be using any acronyms and because
that's
people just
it.
don't understand it, unfortunately. So you've got to try and be in as layman terms as you possibly can.
Absolutely, and that's the way
Yeah,
forward, I think. Or
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
teach them the military jargon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's just a habit that you get into in life, don't you? Unfortunately, and
Yeah,
you're always like, oh, sorry, you've got to, when you're doing work in that team environment. So you're doing some
yeah,
teams in the corporate world, and you drop into that military terminology, and you're like, oh, sorry, it means this.
yeah. Don't say sorry.
Yeah, you
Just
got
be
to correct
educated.
yourself.
No, just educate them on the military terminology.
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's
yeah,
go for a wet and some scran.
yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, yeah. You've got all those different words in the UK, haven't you? You've got the boot next to the
Yeah,
Royal Marines, different to the Paras, and
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
different language.
So I did 3 deployments with 3 Commando Brigade, and when I went to London, I was working with the guards. I mean, they do everything proper. I mean, it was quite amusing because as a colour sergeant working in an infantry regiment, I was called colour. When I
Yes.
got to to London, the guards called colour sergeants sir. So I'm trying to get my head around being called sir, and then the officers are calling me colour sergeant instead of colour.
Yeah.
So
don't call me sir. I work for a living. You know.
Absolutely. So, it took me a little while to get the hang of that, and so coming from working with the bootnecks, I used to say to the guys, "Come on, let's go for a wet." What?
Yeah. Let's go for a wet.
We have a brew. No, we're going for a wet.
Yeah. And if you don't know the language, what a wet is, that's right. That you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, that's right. It's you can be speaking, alien.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I even had to learn the way the bootnecks bite. I had a team at one stage, half paras, half bootnecks, and I think it was hilarious.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, brews and wets going all over the place.
And then it continues on. Even the blokes that go to the Hereford or down to Poole, it's exactly the same. They continue on. It's just part of your DNA, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all that banter that goes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful talking to you, Tim. And if anybody wants to go and check out my site, they can go and have a look at. It's very, very simple at markashbyconsulting.com, and I've got a free masterclass on there that they can click onto and have a listen to me talk about what I do. And if they want to get in touch with me, send me an email and get in touch.
Brilliant.
It's been wonderful. Yeah, thanks for your time, and you take care.
You're welcome.
See you, Tim. Bye.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.